Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel, Reading with the Crew, episode 54. Doc?
Thank you so much there, Jack61, and it's great to be back and welcome, beautiful people. We have returned back in 2024 to start a brand new podcast series. So essentially, Neville and I, we've put together some new material, which we'll be discussing today as a panel. And we're going to be continuing with the new Reading with the Crew series. As you know from last year, we had done quite a few podcasts reading from John Ferak's book, The Wrecking Crew, and it was a really well watched series, and we had a lot of comments, and of course we got a little bit sidetracked, right, guys? Because Convicting a Murderer came out.
No. Doesn't have anything to do with that Razor Falcom guy that's in here. What the hell? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm actually a bit concerned by this new panel member, who just suddenly disappeared. Yeah, isn't that interesting? Podcast has started off with a bang. Well, look, guys, again, thank you so much. We spent a lot of time last year looking at specific chapters from John Ferak's book, and we sort of got a little bit diverted because we did a rebuttal to Convicting a Murderer, and we did, I think, up nearly 10 episodes, quite a few episodes, rebutting Convicting a Murderer, and that went down really, really well. But I must admit, it was very, very tough going. As you know, new year, new beginning, and the Foul Play team, as well as other YouTubers, of course, read out the new response by Kathleen Zollner yesterday, and we read it out as a group, and we did a little bit of analysis. And the remarkable thing is, guys, talk about timing, right, guys? The chapter that we're going to be focusing on today and for the oncoming podcast is straight from Kathleen Zollner's new filing. And we'll put up the material in a second, but I just want to do just a bit of a general introduction. So both Neville and myself put together this new material, and we'll be discussing it as a panel. And of course, guys, we welcome your questions. Now, Jack61, are you able to put up the very first slide? And Cherie, do you see the people in chat, and are you able to call them out who's actually joined us today?
Okay. We have JD, Mary Cop, Jazz Naz Gaming, Passive Bear, JJX, Gloria, Nanny Angie Dickinson,
Welcome.
Double D, Clive Coolidge, Rhonda SD, Nan's Life 7, Jennifer Manning, Lisa Zakowski,
Welcome.
Sila 442, Pete Moss,
Hey.
Graham Moss, Crime Vault, Master Cedar, Colette M, Something
Welcome.
to Talk About. Sorry. Sherry Lynn Bontillo,
Hey, welcome.
Cher. Rumor has it, Sheila Hawkins. I think I've got everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, welcome. Well, look, guys, like I said, Neville and I have put together this new material that we're going to be presenting in the podcast. And welcome to the new Reading with the Crew series 2024. Again, guys, if you like the material that we do, please subscribe. And guys, just check to make sure that you still are subscribed, because apparently YouTube can kick you off. So just check to make sure that you are subscribed. If you like what we do, please leave your DNA on the thumbs up button. That all helps. And turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our podcasts. So, guys, what we're going to be doing today, Jack61, did you have a quick comment?
I did, and it's very brief, and something that we always try to do to tell everyone: please be civil to each other, be kind, take the high road, is if somebody comes in and is trying to be a distraction, somebody will take care of it. Let us know if we by chance miss it. But just be civil. And if you get mad, just don't type for a few minutes. Withhold it and type your question out to someone or even to us in in a civil way, right? That's it,
Awesome.
Doc.
Awesome. Thank you so much there, Jack61. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be covering a brand new material from John Ferak's book. And as you can see on the left-hand side, John Ferak just recently put out a brand new edition. Let me tell you right now, it has all the original material and it has brand new material at the end of the book. In this series of podcasts, guys, we're going to be covering the very new material. And it just so happens to parallel exactly what Kathleen Zellner has filed in her response. And I'll tell you right now, guys, we're going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to deep dive into this new material. So we want to say, please purchase the book. You can purchase the book. I purchased the e-version. It really is an excellent book. Whether you're a rookie in this field, in this particular case, or you have many years of experience, the Wrecking Crew, Demolishing the Case Against Stephen Avery, is really an excellent book and thoroughly recommended by all of us. All of us here on the Foul Play team, we want to thank all of our subscribers and also the very hard work that our mods do behind the scenes. As you know, guys, we have a very extensive website, a YouTube channel, and a Discord channel. Now, I know that things have been a little bit quiet lately, but I'm sure that things are going to ramp up now that Kathleen Zellner has filed her new response. And again, guys, we thank all of you for your support. Things have been really, really hard, as you know, in 2023. Was a lot of turmoil, a lot of change, but we want to thank you guys for sticking with us. And I'm sure Jack61 will back me up, but our subscriber numbers have actually increased, and that's incredible. Jack61.
Yeah, just briefly, our goal is to get the word out. You say, oh well, it's just all about you guys are just about the clicks. No, we're really not. We try to keep our, if anybody ever pays attention, our thumbnails for our podcast are pretty vanilla. Yeah, I can jazz them up, new, breaking, put all kinds of red flashing lights. No, that's not what we're about. We're about getting, what we find documentation-wise out to people, let them make up their own mind, and talking about it, give our opinion on where we stand. That doesn't mean you have to believe what we believe, right?
Correct.
So, with that said, I do want to welcome. We have had last several months we've had a lot of new people join and subscribe, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. Because again, our goal is to get the word out, whatever that word is. And when I mean word, I mean documentation-wise, phone calls. Got a bunch of new Jody phone calls here recently. I still don't have them all uploaded yet, but I took a break. I just like everybody else. I had to kind of walk away, but I'm working on it. So what I haven't gotten up from this last batch will be up before long. So yeah, it's been great. So keep on keeping on. We love it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much there, Jack61. And the chapter that we're going to be dealing with is just called New Witnesses Emerge. And I think everyone has got a fairly sizable clue on what this is all about. And it ties in beautifully with what we read yesterday. So it's all coming together really, really well. And Jack61, if we can have the very next slide. So guys, this is just to show you that the material is not owned by us. The material, of course, is owned by John Ferak, and we're using it really as a form of both criticism, for commentary, for teaching purposes, for education, and for research. So we just put up this disclaimer here so everyone knows what we've been talking about. Can we have the next slide, Jack 61? Now, unfortunately, as we all know and as we've seen, especially during our rebuttals of convicting a murderer, there were a lot of very, very heated debates throughout the social media community and on our channel, and sometimes it got pretty nasty and very personal. So I want to read this out, and I think this is important. And because we are dealing with a very emotive case, and we understand people's emotions, and in a lot of cases, people's emotions run high. So I want to read these out, and this is very, very important. Okay, point number one. The primary material that the Foul Play team is going to be presenting in these Reading with Approved podcasts, they're actually from both John Ferak and Kathleen Zellner. So that's where the primary material comes from. The Foul Play team will be commenting, providing opinions, and speculating on possible scenarios. It's very important that personal opinions and speculation are not fact. That's very, very important. Now, because we are researchers and we spend a lot of time looking at documentation, and a lot of members on the Foul Play team spend a lot of time FOIAing documents, we'll be trying to be using as many official documentations where appropriate, including the use of phone calls. So using those documents is very important to back up a point. And as Jack 61 highlighted, it's absolutely crucial that you do your own research and draw your own conclusions. Right, guys? Do not listen to us. Do not listen to what documentaries have shown. It's very important that you do your own research and draw your own conclusions. If your conclusions are different to ours, that's cool. Everyone can draw their own conclusions. We have a lot of the primary material on our website. There's no paywall. It's all free. Go your hardest, guys. All the very best. Now, here is a very important point. The Foul Play team is not accusing anyone of any nefarious activity involving the murder of Teresa Hallbach. And I'm sure here everyone on the panel agrees with that. We're not accusing anyone. We're covering a chapter from John Ferak's book, and we're presenting the material. And we do search for the truth, good, bad, or otherwise. And my final comment, and Jack 61 made this point previously, please be civil and respectful in your comments, right? Please don't try and hijack the chat session, okay? This is a very, very serious case, and the material that we're covering today is extremely serious. As you know, guys, sometimes Barb Tadich would join our chat. I'm not sure if other family members have occasionally joined in as well. And it is very, very difficult for them to hear this material. But it has been presented, it's out in the public, and we will be discussing it. Jack 61 or Cherie, do you have any comments on what I've just put up? Jack 61.
Yeah, just a brief one, and talking about, forming your own opinions and these cases being polarizing. Let's just take a brief scenario of how this can really blow up, and oftentimes does. Let's just say that we have a discussion about how the police did or did not collect documentation. Let's just pick the burn pit because it's easy. They didn't photograph anything on, November 8th, 2005. They just started shoveling. Sergeant goes and gets a rake, starts raking shit up. They didn't photograph anything. Even after that, even during the sifting, this alleged sifting of the bones, we end up with a box of whatever that could have came from Mars, for all I know, because they didn't document it. That's my
Yeah.
personal opinion. I'm not asking anybody to agree with me, but I sure as hell don't agree with what they did. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It can become very polarizing for me.
Correct. And all you got to do is check the social media pages, X and on other social media platforms, and I'll tell you what, some of the personal attacks that I've seen, some directed to myself and other members on Foul Play, and others as well in the community, is actually quite shocking. As I said to you before, we're really here to find the truth. We all do this for free, and none of us get any money or any compensation. We do this because we are genuinely very interested in the case, and we do it to seek justice. And the Jack 61, can we have the very next slide, please? So yeah, we do acknowledge and we do realize that it is a very emotive subject and a very emotive topic. And all of us here, absolutely 100%, are here for the memory of Teresa Halbach, right? She tragically lost her life at a tender age of 25 years old, and in a truly shocking manner. We're here to hopefully find out the truth of what happened to her that horrible day. Now, if you guys have found the truth and you're very happy with what you found, kudos to you guys. But we're here for the sole purpose of to find out, to satisfy ourselves of what happened that horrible day to Teresa Halbach. And it's remarkable. We have spent many years doing podcasts, and we've had some great discussions, and there are many YouTubers out there who do the same thing. And I must admit, I actually know very little about Teresa Halbach and her life. It's remarkable. We spent many years looking at the murder investigation, but it's sad that very little focus has actually been directed on Teresa and her life. There's a lot that I don't know. And yeah, it's just one of those situations. And even in the court cases, there really wasn't much information that was talked about Teresa. But guys, we're all here for the memory of Teresa and to seek justice. Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide, please. And look, a big shout out has got to go to the Defense Diaries. If you haven't checked out their podcasts, please make sure you do. The Defense Diaries are really two criminal defense attorneys, Bob and Ali Motta, and they're doing a series looking at and asking a very simple question: Avery, guilty or innocent? Basically, the question they ask is, did he do it? And what is remarkable, and Jack 61, and I'm sure Cherie will back me up on this, is that they are going through CASO page by page. They're going through the MTSO as well, looking at, I think, some of the DCI reports, looking at phone calls, and they're doing it very systematically. So guys, if you get a chance, make sure you check out the podcast series by the Defense Diaries guys. It really is amazing. They're on episode 11 at the moment. Jack 61.
Yeah, they went through the Manitowoc County summary. They're in the process of going through the Calumet, the CASO report, investigative report. And I did pose the question in their Facebook group. They have a Facebook group that's quite popular. There's also a side chat associated with that group that I belong to. But I did ask the question in the main group if they were going to be covering the DCI reports. But Bob and nor Ali have answered that question, so I don't know. I hope they do. I don't know how they can't, honestly. That's my opinion.
Yeah, correct. But the good thing about these two guys is they're going through the material very systematically, which is awesome. So they're reading out the pertinent information. They've got no skin in the game, right? And they're asking a simple question: did Avery do it? Yes or no? Did he do it? And what is remarkable about these guys, because they are defense attorneys, they're very used to reading police reports. And Jack 61 will back me up on this. But they look at it from a defense attorney perspective.
Yes.
And what I really like about them is that they give kudos when a report is written well. But I tell you what, that's very, very scathing when a police report is not written very well, and it's very difficult to interpret. And it's amazing that they've also come up to the same conclusions about the same areas that ourselves and many other YouTubers who deal with this case have come to the same conclusions. Like, for example, they've got a lot of issues regarding the burn barrels and the burn pit, the bones, and other elements or other aspects of the case so far. And again, guys, they're a totally independent team. They're not associated with foul play or any others, and they're doing a very, very thorough documented analysis. So it'd be very, very interesting to see how far they go. It will probably take them a few years, I reckon, but check them out. The podcasts go for about an hour, hour and a half. And I know you're going to laugh, Jack61, but I'm going to try and keep these podcasts relatively short. I think they will have a much greater impact if we keep them short rather than going 4 or 5 hours, because there's a lot of material to cover. So Jack61, do you have any comments?
Well, I do, and it's basically about Bob and Allie, and you talked about them. They're trying to look this as unbiased as they can from a defense lawyer standpoint, and they've made it very clear about the reports that they have read so far, how they're written, especially the queso investigation report, because commented about it yesterday a little bit. We've talked about it before. It's written in the narrative, right? And they've never really seen it this way. They don't really like it at all.
Correct. 100% correct. So I thoroughly recommend checking them out. Like I said, they're going through it very judiciously, quite slowly, but they're very, very thorough. And the good thing is they're able to put points from other documentation together. And of course, you could imagine they're getting a lot of information from all over the place. And they've given us a shout out too, because they've gone to our library, our website, and obtained documents. So a big shout out to both Bob and Ali. But at the same token, guys, the Foul Play team also want to give a shout out to 2 other channels, Just Rhonda and all her hard work that she's doing with the Daniel Holtzclaw case. Please show her some love and subscribe and go to her channel. That's such an incredibly difficult case. And the other one is Amy, Case X Case, and the case that she's working on. I've only done a little bit of research in it, and my God, that's a very, very complex and convoluted case. Please give them your love and join their channels and subscribe, and we'll take it from there. Thank you so much, Jack61. Can we have the very, very first slide? Now, so we actually start the podcast, and the chapter is entitled New Witnesses Emerge. I think it's pretty obvious who these new witnesses are. We've talked about it, we've discussed it, and this chapter is fantastic because it gives the background. And of course, the new witnesses that we're talking about are both Tom Sawinski and Tom Baresh. Now, there's only 3 of us on the panel at the moment. Cherie, do you actually see the slide?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Would you like to read it? And I'll tell you when to stop, and then we'll head in with the discussion. Let's go for it, guys.
Okay. After the November 2018 publication of Wrecking Crew, world-famous exoneration lawyer Kathleen Zeltner sharpened her focus, suggesting Bobby Dassey, Stephen Avery's dark and disturbed nephew, was Teresa Halbach's killer. On a beautiful fall afternoon of September 29th, 2023, Zeltner and I met on the patio of a Starbucks coffee shop near her suburban Chicago law offices near Naperville.
Okay, before we go on to the next slide. So, guys, there's no punches being pulled here. Okay, this is as serious as you can get, right? There's no mucking around. There's no beating about the bush. You know who Kathleen Zellner, rightly or wrongly, is going after, and that's Bobby Dassey. Bobby Dassey, of course, is the son of Barb Taddick. So already you can see that this is a horrendous situation, especially for Barb and her family, and also for Bobby. To be targeted like this is very, very serious. So what we're going to do, guys, we're going to unpack this, right? We're going to look at it, examine it, and ask the question, why? Why is Kathleen Zellner targeting Bobby Dassey, right? So Jack 61, if we can have a look at the very next slide, please. All right, so everyone knows, because of course there are new people involved in the case. The gentleman on the left is John Ferak. And John Ferak has got a very long, distinguished reputation. He's both an author and a journalist, and he's written many true crime novels. I've read a couple of them. He doesn't muck around. He's an investigative journalist, delves into a lot of cases involving wrongful convictions, etc., etc. John Ferak is also right, Jack 61. John Ferak is extremely critical of the handling by law enforcement.
Oh, yes.
Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases. John Ferak has written many commentary pieces in the media, and he's very, very scathing of how law enforcement handled the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey cases, and of course, involving the murder victim, Teresa Horbach. So he's definitely a thorn in their side. And I don't think John Ferak is well respected in the state advocate or guilty community. Any comments, guys? Any comments?
Well, in fact, I know he's not. You know, he wrote a remember the article he put in the oh gosh, I don't know if it was the Post Crescent or the other one. Yeah, and talking about Colburn, and then one of the state advocates, Brenda, wrote him a pretty scathing email or whatever. This is back years ago. I mean, I remember seeing it. A lot of people probably haven't seen it, but she was pretty critical of what he had written in his efforts and his investigations. So yeah, he's not well liked by many on the state advocate side for sure.
Correct. So he is very controversial, but he is extremely thorough, and of course he also involved himself in the Ricky Hochschlatter case as well. I think there's a YouTube video. I'm not sure whether he's written. I don't think he's written a book specifically on that case, but I know he's written a lot of commentary in the newspapers or the media on the Ricky Hochschlatter case. And of course, the Ricky Hochschlatter case involves the same type of individuals that were involved in the Stephen and Brendan trials as well. Right, Jack 61?
Yeah, and for those, Doc mentioned it, for those that haven't read any of John Ferak's books, I definitely recommend it. He wrote a book about this Nebraska older couple that were killed. And this is completely unrelated to what we do, but it's an excellent book and shows you how the tunnel vision of law enforcement can really run amok. Oh my God, it is horrible. And a crime lab person that actually got sent to prison over what he did. It's crazy. Correct. It's an excellent book.
Kofod. Yeah, true. Yeah, it really is really shocking. John Ferak doesn't muck around, and he's obviously a very, very good friend of Kathleen Zellner, who you can see on the right-hand side. And Kathleen Zellner, as we all know, she's Stephen Avery's current post-conviction attorney. Her speciality is in exonerations, and she's an extremely successful attorney. Needless to say, she's also not well-liked in the state advocate and guilty community. But she's been a Stephen Avery's post-conviction attorney for several years now. Worked very, very hard, is doing a pro bono, as far as I'm aware. And as the Foul Play team and other excellent YouTubers read out yesterday, her latest response to the state. Jack 61.
Yeah, and I also got to add, there's a sect of the truther community that also doesn't like Kathleen Zellner, and I think we'd be not hitting the mark if we didn't say that. And I don't agree with them. While I don't necessarily agree with everything that Kathleen Zellner has put forth, that's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it. At the same time, I would never work towards trying to get someone removed as someone's attorney that's taking it pro bono with her background and knowledge and her access to money to pay for all this stuff. Unless I had somebody at least as good lined up, right? Who would do that? But in fact, that is exactly what has tried to happen in the past few years, and I don't agree with that.
Correct.
No matter if I agree with any theories or whatever that Kathleen puts forward, I would never work against her in that matter. No way. Unless I had somebody waiting in the wings says, okay, let me give it a shot. I'll take it pro bono, and I've got as much money as she does, or whatever, and I'll pay for everything. No way.
Yeah, Kathleen Zellner, I'll get to you in a second, Sheree. Kathleen Zellner has received a lot of criticism in her approach. She is a polarizing figure. There's no doubt about it. But I'll tell you what, she is extremely clever, very smart. She's got a certain specific approach that not everyone agrees with. Kathleen Zellner likes to be very measured in her response, very cool, very calm, very patient. She's not a fire and brimstone type of attorney. Sometimes I wish that she was, but she has her own approach, and she hires the best of the best, right? Sheree, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to say that when they these people that complain about Kathleen have 20-some exonerations in their resume or whatever, then I will listen. But otherwise,
Correct.
They better be quiet in my book.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Very good point. I see that Mark's got a comment. Ferak released a press report today that is a scathing of Judge Angela. Oh boy.
Oh yes. Shit. I'm definitely gonna try to get a line on that. Thanks, Mark. Yeah. Appreciate that.
So it's pretty. Thank you very much, Mark. It's pretty obvious that these two people, both John Ferak and Kathleen Zellner, work hand in hand and very close together, and that's what this chapter is all about, and that's why we're presenting it and we're dissecting it. And the new witnesses. Just to answer that question, we're talking about Tom Sawinski and Tom Baresh, but there were many other witnesses as well that we've discussed in the past that saw Teresa's Toyota RAV4 off the Avery salvage yard. And I tell you what, John Ferak is extremely scathing, and also Kathleen Zellner is. And I'm sure there is a fear in the Wisconsin legal system that if Kathleen Zellner gets her time in the sun in front of a judge, it's going to get very, very bad and very, very ugly. She's got a huge mountain of information. And don't forget, she's hired some of the very best experts money can buy. We've gone through the affidavits. I've done several presentations looking at the affidavits of various experts. Go check them out. It's all available for free, of course, on our YouTube channel. Jack 61 or Sheree, do you have a comment?
I do. Scooby said talk about Ferak. Is he still writing for the Post Crescent? I doubt it now, and that's true. He left a few years ago. He was writing for them and USA Today, I think, in the Wisconsin area. But I don't know why he left. I don't know if the situation became unattainable for him or what, but he left there, and he's in the Chicago area writing for a paper called The Patch. He does a lot of investigative work there. In fact, I haven't followed it in a while, but he was looking at a case in that area where this cop, his girlfriend died, and apparently he was the first one on scene. The gun was there. It's pretty bad, and I'm not accusing the cop of killing his girlfriend, but that's sure as hell what it looks like. It's terrible. He got suspended with pay for like forever while this was being investigated. Forever. I mean, I'm not talking about a couple of months. I'm talking about a couple of years. I can't remember how it was resolved, but that's where he's at now, Scooby. He's in the Chicago area, not far from Kathleen.
Yep. So that's what this chapter is all about, guys. It's basically John Ferak interviewing Kathleen Zona. And so this is fantastic because, like I said, we're very fortunate because she released her response and it mirrors exactly with what we read out yesterday. Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? So with this, this slide really backs up the whole tragedy of this particular case. So Kathleen Zona is specifically targeting Bobby Dassey. And you can see him here on the right-hand side. And this infamous photo was taken during the Stephen Avery trial, in which Mr. Kratz asked Bobby Dassey to point out his own uncle in the courtroom. And you can see on the left-hand side, Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey. Now, of course, Brendan is the younger brother of Bobby, and Stephen is the uncle of both Brendan and Bobby, and Barb is Stephen's sister. So it's a horrible, horrible situation, especially for Barb. But as we all know, both Stephen and Brendan were found guilty, and now they're serving life sentences in prison for the murder of Teresa Horbach. And it's very important to point out right at the beginning, the foul play team, no one here on this panel, is accusing Bobby Dassey of having committed anything nefarious involving the murder of Teresa Horbach. All right, now I want to point that out, that what we're doing is presenting the material that Kathleen Zona has put in front of a judge, and yesterday her response to the filing. So it is a very, very touchy, very difficult situation. Jack 61, sir.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to understand that Kathleen is doing what she was instructed to do by the Court of Appeals opinion back whenever the hell that last one was, their last decision, and they left the door open for several things that she could do, and this is exactly what she's done. So it's up to them to make a decision. I mean, they're not a fact-finding court, so it's up to them to make a decision on whether to order the circuit court to have a hearing and get this stuff cleared up. Because as I understand, I'm not a lawyer, none of us are, but as I understand Wisconsin law, when a defense attorney gets an affidavit, the court must accept it as the truth.
As the truth.
Until proven otherwise or discredited in some fashion. They can say, no, can't consider you because of XYZ, right? So
Correct. But you see here, in this picture here, just summarizes the tragedy, right?
Yep.
If, Kathleen Zona is not only accusing Bobby Dassey of murdering Teresa Horbach, she's actually gone one step further. Right, she's accusing Bobby Dassey of actually setting up his own uncle, right, framing his own uncle for the murder of Teresa Horbach. So there's no doubt that the spotlight is being firmly placed on Bobby Dassey, and he was a young man back then, but so was his brother. His brother Brendan was 16 at the time, right? So it is a terrible, terrible situation, and I'm sure none of us here on the panel, and you fine guys in chat, would know what this is like. And for someone like Barb, the mother of both Bobby and Brendan, and the sister of Stephen, it's a terrible, terrible situation.
Think about your own family and how that situation, you would see it in your house. Try to have that empathy. And I'm not saying that you have to cry a river. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying look at it from it being your family. How would you handle it? I mean, I know for me, I'd be insane. I'd probably in an asylum.
Yeah,
But
the amount of pressure, it will be phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So, guys, we're going to unpack this, right? We're going to unpack it. So, guys, let's make it clear. Kathleen Zellner is accusing Bobby Dassey of not only murdering Teresa Halbach, but setting his own uncle up as well, framing his own uncle. And as Jack 61, sorry, Jack 61.
I was just going to say, you know, and anybody that followed along in what we read out yesterday, Kathleen Zellner went through step by step the decisions that Judge Angie made and her justifications, her citations. And I remember one in specific that was completely wrong, and others were really pretty much misinterpreted. Of course, this is in Kathleen's opinion, and just reading out what was in those citations that was included, I agree with her. So I don't know. We'll see where that goes.
Okay. So Jack 61, can we have the next slide, please? All right. Cherie, would you like to? I'll actually read the top bit. That's John Ferak. But if you could read the bit in yellow after me, that's the response by Kathleen Zellner. Are you happy with that?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So I'll make a start. During the interview, I told her, quote, "It seems like you and your staff go above and beyond, not only to prove the innocence of your client to the court, but to show the court, show the police, show the public, and everyone else interested who the real killer was in that particular case. That's been true in many, many of your famous cases. With Making a Murderer and Stephen Avery, I was curious how you feel about Bobby Dassey, Stephen Avery's nephew. What led you to be convinced that Bobby Dassey, in your eyes, is the killer of Teresa Halbach?"
We have tried to create the best way to create reasonable doubt in a murder case is to point the finger at someone else, Zellner explained, and we've done that over the years very successfully. So in the Avery case, we started looking at the police. There were people who actually thought that the police had arranged the murder, and we were able to quickly dispel all of that. We also learned that the blood vial was not the source of Stephen Avery's blood. So then I knew that it had to be somebody very close to Stephen and had to be somebody inside the family. So we began to.
Okay, we just stop it right there. We just stop it right there because there's a hell of a lot to unpack, right, Jack 61, right, Cherie? So,
yeah.
If you notice, Kathleen Zellner is being very, very strategic. She's obviously paid a lot of attention to what Judge Angie has said, right? And you notice she's basically ruling out the police in any nefarious activity involving the murder of Teresa Halbach. Yet yesterday, someone pointed out that she left the door open about law enforcement involving in using the groin swabs for the hood latch swab, right, Jack 61?
Yeah, she did. I mean, that was really the only thing she brought up about law enforcement that would be considered, out there on the edge of something that they potentially did wrong. Right?
Correct. So her approach is very, very different. A lot of people have been saying, oh, look, and we too have been saying potentially law enforcement could have been involved in planting forensic evidence. For example, the key, maybe some of the cremains, maybe other items. But Kathleen Zellner knows that if she goes to court, I don't know what everyone else on the panel and in chat feels, that if she goes to court pointing a finger at law enforcement, what do you reckon her chances are of any form of success? Jack 61.
Oh, I think it unless she brings in, she's got to bring in something to back that up because it's just an accusation. It's just like us talking. I mean, it certainly would carry more weight than us or any other YouTuber or whatever person in the community just talking. You go into a court of law and you start accusing various law enforcement officers of doing nefarious things in a case to bolster the case. It happens. It happens all the time. We know that. We've seen it. But you got to prove it. You got to have something tangible. It's. I mean, I can't even. I mean, the key is a real problem for me. It
Yeah,
can't be explained. It just can't be explained. And it certainly what they did at trial in 2007 was a disaster. Kratz knew it was a disaster, which
yeah.
is the reason why he wanted the jury to say, basically, these guys were just kind of helping the case. We know he did it. Come on, don't be dumb.
Please forgive them.
Please
Correct.
forgive them, right? Yeah, that's right,
Correct.
Doc.
But Kathleen Zona, guys, and also people in chat, she actually listened to the judge, right? She knew that if she took the line of blaming law enforcement, it was going to go nowhere. Look what happened to Strang and Buting when they accused various law enforcement officers, Lincoln Colburn, of planting the key, planting the blood. It didn't go down so well, and it really incensed the state attorneys, prosecuting attorneys. It did not end well at all. Notice Kathleen Zona now has completely abandoned the blood vial theory, right? The FBI, of course, could not find any EDTA, but I think what convinced her in the end were the DNA methylation studies that proved that the blood could not have come from 1996. It was blood from someone actually 9 years older than what Stephen was at the time. But the research group also did a genomic DNA profile from that blood sample that was found on the passenger seat, and it was found to belong to Stephen Avery. So there's no doubt in my mind, if everything is above board, that the blood and the DNA that's present in the RAV4 belongs to Stephen, and that blood is fresh. That is, it's not from a blood vial. And I did a presentation on the age of Stephen Avery's DNA or blood in the RAV4. Check it out. So that was a really good little presentation there that talks about the molecular biology behind the DNA methylation studies. So Kathleen Zellner, if you notice here, is saying, no, police are not involved in the murder. No, they didn't plant the blood. But what is very disturbing is what Cherie read out. And I'll read it again because this is a very important point. Right, guys? I'll read it out. So then I knew that it had to be somebody very close to Stephen and had to be somebody inside the family. What does that immediately tell you, guys? Jack 61. What does that immediately tell you?
Well, she's pointed her focus away from law enforcement for the overall as to who committed the crime. I mean, she's going after a Denny and the ability to get around this third party liability thing. So yeah, I mean that opens the door up for anyone basically that was on the property on October 31st. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we can't say anything other than what we know. Bobby was there when Teresa was there. Again,
Correct.
That's not an accusation that he ran out and killed her on the spot, but he admitted he was there and that he saw her.
Correct. And we'll be discussing that in a second. But
Yep.
what, Cherie, do you have any comments about what Kathleen Zellner said in that particular line?
No, I guess not.
Okay. To me, what it immediately tells me is that she's not looking at anybody else, right? She's not looking at Ryan Hilligus anymore. Not looking at Scott Lowdorn anymore. Not looking at anybody else. Check. Nobody. She's now focused, rightly or wrongly, on a family member close to Stephen. Right, guys?
Didn't it seem like that's what the COA, the Court of Appeals, was saying she pretty much had to do?
Yes.
Yep, that's right.
Yes. Correct. And that's why we're going through this chapter, because in a way, it was the judge that almost forced her to go down this pathway, in a way, if you're going to present a strong case, Jack 61.
Well, yeah, we think about, and we were incredulous back when we got the reply from a decision from Judge Angie, and she says, well, basically, no one saw Bobby with her keys or her electronics, so therefore this gets discounted. And I'm thinking to myself, what? I'm not a lawyer or anything, but it doesn't work for me. He had her. I mean, he allegedly had her car. This is what Sawinski said. And Baresh saw Bobby with her
Correct.
car after the fact, 5 days later.
Correct.
That's a big effing deal. It's huge.
It's potentially very, very huge. Correct. Yeah. But in a way, because we've read the responses by the judge in a way defined the boundaries and put up the goalposts of what Kathleen Zellner must do to be successful. And hence why she presented Sawinski, Baresh, right, as key material witnesses, right? Just Rhonda, welcome.
Woohoo!
She may not have set up a microphone just yet.
All right. Yeah, I don't have my microphone with me, so I don't know if this works or not. I'm
yes,
just using
it works.
my laptop.
We can hear
you.
We can hear you. You sound fine.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right, I'll hang out for as long as I can.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Hey, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us. All right. So, Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? So we know who was on the property, right? We know that Kathleen Zellner is looking at a family member, someone very close to Stephen. So if we have a look at, I presume she's talking about male family members here, right? We're totally eliminating, of course, Dolores and, of course, Barb. So the male family members that were actually present when Teresa arrived at the Avery salvage yard, as far as I can tell, there was Bobby Dassey, Chuck, Earl, and of course, Stephen. And it was Stephen Avery that had organized Teresa to come out and photograph the very van that's behind him. That's the maroon van that Stephen wanted to place in Auto Trader. That van actually belonged to his sister, Barb. Now, what is very interesting here, for those who have done the reading and research, both Earl and Chuck have got fairly extensive criminal histories. In the docuseries Convicting a Murderer, Earl Avery was used as a mouthpiece for very damaging comments against his own brother, Stephen. Also, Earl's ex-wife, Candy, did the same thing. Chuck is the older brother of Stephen. And I think through the phone calls that we've played, there clearly was a lot of tension between both Chuck and Stephen. Furthermore, there definitely was a love interest between Chuck and Jody. Guys, would you agree with that?
Yep. There's one more player, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention it because I have a thing for it. Don't know if Candy was on the property, and we know the hatred that she had for Stephen, and that's true. That's a fact.
Correct. But we're looking at the male members.
Right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to detract. I'm just saying.
No.
I don't know.
Understood. Yep. Understood. and you make a really excellent point there, Jack 61. There was a lot of tension between a lot of the family members and Stephen. Jack 61, would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, because the money thing, and this is also something that's not really talked about in too much in any of the legal documentation, but we know that it's talked about. Is Stephen was pretty braggy about this pile of money he was going to be getting. He was going to do this, and that has to be considered, no matter what we see in the legal realm of things. This was the family thing, and how that could have affected others in the family. It's fact.
Correct. So the family dynamics were fairly strained, and that money, I think, was going to be a big game changer for everyone on that property. So, to summarize, the 4 male members that were definitely on that property were both Bobby, Chuck, Earl, and of course, Stephen. And remember, guys, the only forensic evidence that directly points to Teresa Halbach is against Stephen, right? That's an important point. There is no direct forensic evidence linking either Bobby, Chuck, or Earl to Teresa Halbach. All the forensic evidence links Stephen to Teresa Halbach, right? That's an important point. Now, the other thing, of course, is that the other 2 brothers, both Blaine and Brendan Dassey, when Teresa Halbach arrived, they were still at school, right? They arrived home, they were dropped off by the school bus driver at about 3:45 p.m., right? So they were still at school. Now, a lot of people have also commented, oh yeah, but what about other people that were on the property looking for car parts? That I don't know if that's been thoroughly investigated. I know that there was a gentleman by the name of Kennedy who was around in the office shop at around 3 o'clock looking for Chuck. He couldn't find Chuck for about 5 or so minutes. So I don't know if there were any other males on the property. But Kathleen Zona is targeting Bobby Dassey, right? So there were 4 males present when Teresa Halbach arrived on the Avery salvage yard to do her photo shoot. Guys, do we have any comments so far?
There's some general chat, but I think we're okay.
Yeah. I just want to say one thing completely off topic. TTM, I think it's TTM Fangirl is watching from Twitter. So thank you for doing that. Awesome. So I've logged on to Twitter. I think she said in the comments that she can only see her comments, obviously. So I've logged on to Twitter under foul play. I don't know how that happened, but it just did. Anyway, so I guess I just wanted to say that if you're viewing like from Facebook or from Twitter, you're probably not going to see the other comments that are made in the foul play chat. And
they won't.
Now that I'm here for a little bit, I'll pop, while I'm here, I'll try to pop some of those comments on the screen as we go, just so folks on other platforms can see the comments in the foul play chat as well, if that's okay.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. And welcome, everyone. And Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? So what's important here is to try and establish exactly where everybody was. So by reading the documents and going through everything, this is basically how I worked it out. Now, Stephen Avery, this is when Teresa Halbach arrived for her photo shoot. Stephen Avery placed himself inside his trailer. And of course, he was telephoning Teresa Halbach, waiting for her to arrive. Bobby Dassey placed himself inside his mum's trailer. And we'll be talking about that extensively. And you can see the van, where it's got van for sale. That was where Barb Yunder's van was. and Teresa Horbach had parked her RAV4 very, very close to the van that was for sale. So she was around that area. And Chuck Avery, he normally hangs out in the office, and he's very, very close to the entry and exit of Avery Road. And apparently Earl Avery was somewhere in the pit area on an end loader. So the two individuals that stated they saw Teresa Horbach arrive on the property when she arrived at about 2:35 p.m. were Stephen and Bobby. Guys, have I got that correct? I don't recall either Chuck or Earl or anybody else mention that they saw Teresa Horbach.
No, you've got it nailed. This is all we have.
Yep. So this is this is essentially all the information we have, right? Now, it's pretty obvious that both Stephen and Bobby were the two closest individuals to Teresa Horbach where she did her photo shoot. We don't know where Earl was, and allegedly Chuck Avery was in the office. When you look at the layout of the Avery salvage yard, there's really only one way in and one way out. You have to go up or down Avery Road, do a right-hand turn, and go all the way down the gravel road past where Barb lives, and have a look at where the van is. The van is basically situated in between where Bobby was, where Stephen was. Now, what is very interesting, and we'll get into this, have a look where Teresa's RAV4 was eventually found. Have a look where the license plate number, the license plate were found from Teresa's RAV4. Both forensic items were found on the periphery, right? On the boundary of the Avery salvage yard. This is rather bizarre, but when you think about it, it's very easy to dump those items there than rather try and hide them within the pit area. So guys, does anyone have any comments? Why would someone place these items on the periphery? Why not try and hide them deep within the salvage yard? Jack 61.
I can't really speak for the license plate because, I mean, to me, it could have just as easily been left on the car because it still had the big RAV4 sticker on the spare tire cover on the back. It wasn't hit at all. It wasn't disguised. It had actually stuff piled on it that called attention to it because no other vehicles had crap piled over the top of it, especially a newer looking vehicle. The main thing is, though, that RAV4 had to be found. It had to be. That was the key.
Okay, good point. Good point. Does anyone else have any comments? Why would you place the RAV4 and the license plates on the periphery of the salvage yard? Why not hide them?
I thought they were making them easy for to be found.
Okay.
That's my
Okay.
theory.
And Doc, one more thing to add. I apologize.
Not at all.
We have to also add in to this whole theory that, law enforcement didn't have probable cause. They'd already been there twice. They didn't have probable cause to get a warrant at that point. So in comes volunteer searchers that were asked to go search certain areas around Hilligus and Scott Blodorn. And we can't get around that. And the fact that Sheriff Poggle was at Teresa's house that morning at the same time, at approximately the same time that Pam Stern and Nicole showed up. Did something happen? I don't know. I suspect it did. It could have just been, hey, she's the one that came up and suggested that she's the one that said, has anybody searched that Avery salvage yard? But Scott Blodorn and Ron Hilligus knew that Teresa had an appointment there. So why hadn't that already been assigned to other people? Why were they given a camera and Poggle's cell phone exclusively, as far as we know. We don't know anyone else that had these items. Nicole sneaks that camera in. She hides it under her coat. When they got there, we're given permission by Earl. You know, these are questions that I ask. I know other people ask too.
Correct. Yeah, look, I do agree, and also with a lot of the comments. They were meant to be found, and they were meant to be found. They were meant to be found rather quickly, right? And just as an aside, what is very, very interesting is that Stephen said that the reason why he called Teresa Hobart, I think it was about 4:35, was to get it to come back and photograph an end loader, right? And he actually stated in a comment that the end loader was next to the blue shed. Well, lo and behold, there actually is an end loader right next to the blue shed. And we had shown pictures previously that the end loader had some police tape associated with it. But what gets my head done in is that right down from the end loader is the actual car where the number plates were dumped in. Now, I know it could well be a coincidence, but it's very, very interesting that where the license plate were found was very, very close where Stephen said he wanted Teresa to photograph. Now, what is very interesting is this, and it makes no sense, and we've discussed this. If Stephen had committed a crime, and he's the one that placed the RAV4 in that location, why would he then move the number plates and move them in another location? If Stephen Avery's aim was to crush the vehicle in order to hide it, why then toss the number plates away? Why not just simply place the license plates underneath the back seat? Because you're going to crush the entire vehicle, right, guys? Does anyone have any comments? I can't work out why Stephen would then, out in the open, place the number plates. Jack 61.
Yeah, I can't understand that, because, you know, that's basically punk metal. He could have destroyed them, number one, easily. If he had a fire, that he could have actually burnt them up, or he could have, you know, tied them to a rock and thrown them in the lake. But, you know, what's really even more surprising to me is that fireman found them at all, because they were crumpled up in the back seat of that car there, that old station wagon. I'm surprised he found them at all.
Correct. It this is a very, very interesting, very, very interesting scenario, whereby what you find, and this is important, and I'm sure Kathleen Zellner has considered this. Most of the forensic evidence was not hidden at all; was actually out in the open. When you look at the vehicle, the license plate numbers, the key that magically popped out of the cabinet, right? The cremains, the burnt electronics, and eventually Ida Meffel. But Ida Meffel, we can argue that another time. And also the human bones that were found in the Yunder burn barrel. All of that stuff was out in the open. It wasn't buried or disposed of in a judicious manner. It eventually was all very, very easily found. And it was designed to point to one person only, and that was Stephen, right? And it's very interesting, and then I'll shut up. One of the comments that struck me in convicting a murderer, remember, guys, was a comment made by Brenda, was a comment made by also Candace, and also by Candy. Said, if you're placing all these items around the property, you have to have knowledge of the property. Remember that, guys?
Yep.
You got to know your way around the property, right? And oh my God, a family member who's lived there for many years or has worked there for many years will know the place like the back of their hand. That is very, very frightening.
Right. Just a quick comment, Doc.
Yes, of course.
Not only that. Again, looking at the overall, and I'm not trying to detract from the book or anything. And you talk about things being left out in the open, basically. And we can't not think about the Redoubt Quarry, the Manitowoc County Gravel Pit, Mitchell's Materials. We can't leave those out because things were, again, out in the open. They weren't buried, basically. I can't say about Cuss Road because apparently something, in my opinion, was buried at that clandestine burial site. They spent all damn day there. And they allegedly walk away with a rotten pallet and an old peat moss bag. I'm sorry, I have real problems there. So, but again, they could see that this area of this wooded area had been disturbed. A dog hit on it. That's according to Julie Kramer. That told them that something biological had been there. So, human biological.
Correct. And you're 100% correct, Jack 61. But the way Kathleen Zorner is approaching this is from a very strong legal standpoint.
Yes.
In terms of if you're talking about a Denny, if you're talking about a Brady violations, you got to present proof positive of a Denny, proof positive of a Brady violation, right? And what you've highlighted is what is so fascinating and intriguing about this case. I've just shown you a picture of the Avery salvage yard. The crime scene is much larger than that. And thank you so much, Justice One, for pointing that out, because this case is far from very, very simple. It's not, right? So at the moment, what Kathleen Zorner is trying to point out is what makes Bobby Dassey a Denny suspect. Were there any Brady violations? Once she can get in front of a judge, then you have to consider what evidence can be brought in. Do you understand? What can be discussed? Because remember, a lot of her forensic evidence has been procedurally barred.
Yes.
Right?
At this point, that could change.
If she gets in front of a judge, is it all cards on the table?
Well, that would have to come in a new trial to get everything in. But, you just never know what's going to happen in a hearing. But, I guess the point that I was trying to make there, in including these other areas, it's not just knowledge of the salvage yard, it's knowledge of the area. And they're all connected. I mean, come on, they're all right there. I mean, there's some distance, but my God, they're all bordering. So,
100% correct. And of course, as we've seen in Convicting a Murderer, they've now openly admitted, that the bones themselves are human in nature. So that is truly staggering. You're correct. It's not just the Avery salvage yard, but all the surrounding properties and quarries which come into play as well. Very, very interesting. Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? Cherie, do you see the slide?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to continue reading? This is Kathleen Zorner. So remember, on the previous slide, she started to look into the family. Thank you.
Really look at the individuals on the property at the time of the murder, and everything led back to Bobby Dassey. We uncovered that he lied in his trial testimony about seeing Teresa walking towards Stephen's trailer. Teresa left the property, and he knew that. We believe that he followed her. He told numerous lies, including where the computer was in the house. He told lies about seeing Scott Taddick on the road. There were a number of things that pointed back to him. Stephen Avery has always felt that he was involved because he was very obsessed with Teresa Halbach. And so all of those things have led us to file the various motions. Now we've got a direct connection with the crime because we've got an objective witness who's got no stake in the case, who's identified Bobby with the murder victim's car. So we've got the direct connection. We think we've established motive and opportunity. Shall I continue?
Yeah. Yes,
okay,
please.
Sorry. During these past 5 years, since Making a Murder Season 2 aired, millions of people have continued a spirited debate on various social media platforms regarding the Wisconsin judicial system's staunch refusal to grant Stephen Avery a new murder trial. Despite the political shift in the power from Republican to Democratic control of the governor's office and attorney general's office, both of Wisconsin's political parties remain unsympathetic toward Avery and his condemned nephew, Brendan Dassey, the younger brother of Bobby Dassey. Well,
right.
Okay.
Yep. So with what Kathleen Zorner read in the previous slide, what was read by Cherie, of course, we can spend 5 hours. We can spend 10 podcasts on just that comment alone. And I know that Kathleen Zorner has been admonished by that very, very same paragraph, what she's actually accusing Bobby Dassey of having done. She is specifically targeting Bobby as having lied while he was on the stand. And there was a lot of controversy regarding what Stephen said to what Bobby Dassey said. And that is a key pivotal point in the case. It is a 180-degree turnaround from what Stephen said to what Bobby said. And in a way, I do feel very, very sorry for Bobby Dassey, because in this situation, Bobby Dassey did become the star witness for the state. And Ken Kratz, and we'll read it, Ken Kratz made it so in the pre-trial and also as a statement in the opening statement, and again as a statement in the closing argument in the Stephen Avery trial. So Bobby Dassey was quintessential. He was a very, very important witness for the state, and that's why there's no doubt that is why he is being targeted by Kathleen Zorner, right? Because remember, in summary, Stephen said, hey, look, after Teresa came and took a photograph of the van, I paid her. She gave me a book. I went inside. I saw Teresa Horbach leave. And he said, Stephen, remember, in an interview, he goes, look, I saw her turn left on Highway 147. Whether Stephen was accurate, whether he can determine whether he could actually see Teresa's RAV4 turn left, whatever. But that's what he said. He said he saw Teresa Horbach leave. Bobby Dassey said after Teresa Horbach had finished the photo shoot, he saw Teresa walk towards Stephen's trailer. That's it. He never said that he saw Teresa and Stephen encounter each other. At the car, nothing. He never mentions an encounter. But very damning, and we'll get into this, is that when Bobby left his property to go bow hunting, he said, I never saw Teresa, but I saw her RAV4. And then he left to go bow hunting. This was used by the state to imply that Teresa Horbach was in Stephen Avery's trailer. Guys, what do you think?
Well, I have to mention the interview that Bobby gave to Loy, and I can't remember his investigator's name or her name. I think it's Scherer. Anyway, this was November 22nd or 23rd, somewhere around that, 2005. This is a few weeks after the fact. And in that interview, he says he saw Stephen walk back towards his trailer, not Teresa. So the one word change changes everything. And I don't understanding why that change occurred from November 2005 to February, March of 2007. What happened? What kind of pressure was put upon this young man to make that alteration? Something happened.
Yeah, something did. Something actually did. I'm sure of it. Cherie, are you happy to continue, or shall I get another reader?
I can.
You can continue reading?
Yes.
Okay.
While Avery and Brendan Dassey remain heroes to the wrongful conviction movement, the simple-minded uncle and mentally challenged nephew remain banished from society, locked away from the outside world at their respective Wisconsin prison facilities. On July 8, 2021, Stephen Avery lost his biggest supporter, and he was not able to be at his mother's bedside when Dolores Avery died after battling dementia. She was 83. Fate has dealt another cruel blow to Stephen Avery today, right before his birthday tomorrow, Zellner declared on Twitter in July 2021. His mother, Dolores Avery, passed away at 6:50 a.m. He needs your support now more than ever.
Yeah, that I remember when that happened, and I wish we could get Mark Hodder onto the panel. I'm sure he knows more about it as well. But if we can have a look at the very next slide, please. And this is very, very important. Look, it doesn't really matter what you think of Stephen, whether you believe he's guilty or not guilty in the murder of Teresa Halbach. There's one thing for sure, for certain, Stephen loved his mother and his father, of course. But the most important thing is that Dolores, as you can see in just these family pictures, really stood by her son, Stephen. And you can't get any more better than that, than the support and love of a mother, of a parent. And she worked damn hard. Oh my God, especially in the 1985 case, to make sure that her son his case was always heard out there. She worked tirelessly for her son. So no matter what you think of Stephen, his mother supported him to the end. And think about it. Now, we know that Stephen Avery was wrongfully convicted in 1985. Yes, he did pull a shotgun on his cousin and drove her off the road, and he deserved jail time for that. But what happened to him in regards to Penny Bernstein, which we'll talk about in a second, that was just unforgivable. But his mother supported him throughout those really, really hard times. But, it's very, very sad, especially if you look at the photo on the top right, just the brutal effect that it had on the mother and father, just the mental anguish of having to go through this not once, but twice. That's just phenomenal. Does anyone have any comments, guys?
Well, not only that, Doc, but we have to consider. I'm sure Stephen does too, but Alan's getting on in some years. He's got to be. I'm pretty sure that he's old. I don't really know how old he is, but I think he's a couple of years older than Dolores. So, and his health is, I'm sure, pretty shaky at this point. So.
Yeah. It does take definitely a big toll on you, and you can see it. The battle scars that they've got is just terrible. And of course, Dolores passed away. Yeah. Do we have any other comments, guys? Right, we're all good. All right, Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? Are you happy to read this slide, Jack 61? You see it?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay. Dolores Avery had stuck with her son since the beginning of his horrible nightmare way back in 1985. She never wavered in her belief of his innocence when corrupt Manitowoc Sheriff Tom Kosuric framed her son, derailing his life for 18 years for the barbaric and brutal rape of Manitowoc businesswoman Penny Bernstein, along the sandy shores of Lake Michigan during the sweltering summer of 1985. Years later, Avery's mother remained in her son's corner during the Teresa Halbach murder trial insisting to everyone willing to listen that Stephen was innocent of the killing.
Yeah. And if we have a look at the next slide, this basically summarizes it up. Very few people can really comprehend this at all. Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide of what actually happened. As you know, Stephen Avery was accused of a brutal assault on Penny Bernstein and was essentially targeted by both Tom Kacerik and successfully prosecuted by Dennis Vogel. Now, just put yourself in the family situation and Stephen's situation. Now, he was out on bail, right? And he knew he was going to trial for what he did to his cousin, Sandra Morris. No excuses. He was going to cop jail time. He knew it. And that's fair enough. You don't do stuff like that. But imagine being in court, right? Surrounded by your family. And they're the ones that actually saw Stephen in their presence, right? So could you imagine the bizarre and surreal situation whereby Dolores and other family members can account for Stephen's whereabouts for the entire day? And yet the sheriff is saying, no. They're all liars. And Dennis Vogel got Penny Bernstein and her husband, remember guys, in front of the judge, in front of the jury, to reenact the attack twice.
That's brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
To reenact.
Yeah, it's sick.
Right? Now, if you're Dolores and you're and Alan and your other family members and you're sitting in court with poor Stephen, and Penny Bernstein gets up and was asked by Vogel, can you point out your attacker? And Penny Bernstein points out, he did. He attacked me. Imagine to your horror, Stephen and the other 16 material witnesses that said, they thought, no, he was with us. How would you feel? How would you feel when the sheriff of the MTSO says, we got the right guy, right? You will not, if people wrote about it, they would not believe it, yet it occurred, right? Stephen's life got systematically destroyed. Yes, he had to go to prison for what he did to his cousin. No excuses. But the additional 12 years had a massive effect, right? You're starting to question your own sanity, thinking, wait a minute, I was actually helping my family. How the hell did I end up on the beach? Yet, guys, the disgusting thing is that the investigators went the extra mile to prove that Stephen could make it from where he was with his kids to the beach by driving 10 miles an hour faster than the speed limit and bypassing the fact that there were kids to pack, etc., etc. That's how desperate they were for a conviction. Jack 61.
Oh, absolutely. And we also have to consider that some of those witnesses that were there weren't family. They were friends of the family.
Correct. And then when you add in the dodgy hair evidence by none other than Cherie Cohen, and you can easily see that if you're being targeted, you could end up in prison for a long, long time for doing something that you never were involved in. So Jack 61, if we have a look quickly at the very next slide. So here's the big issue for Stephen, and we've discussed it ad nauseum. He was involved in a massive civil suit against the MTSO, the city, Kacerik, and for Vogel. And it was for $36 million. I don't think the money value was really relevant. It was the potential damage that would have done to the careers of many, many officers, right? And the fact that it had far-reaching consequences, because any other case that was handled by Kacerik would obviously be looked at. So what is remarkable and bizarre is that on the verge, right, Jack 61, right, Cherie, on the verge of having Kacerik and Vogel be deposed, Stephen Avery is arrested for a gun charge and then eventually arrested for the murder of Teresa Horbach. The depositions went away. The civil suit was paid out. I think he got $440,000, and that was it. And that disappeared, paying his attorneys. Jack 61.
Yeah, I can't make that work out. Sorry, I've tried. There's just absolutely no way around it. Because Kacerik and Vogel both have tried to hide behind the fact of privilege or whatever of their position. They didn't have to testify this and that, and the judge said you will give full testimony. This is a federal case. They weren't going to hear any of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, he goes down to they take him down to Aurora Medical Center to get his blood or not blood, but buccal swab, and of course they ended up doing the groin swab as well, which they shouldn't have done. Palm prints and fingerprints, and then he gets arrested right there that afternoon on the 9th.
On the 9th.
And
correct.
Yep, and Kacerik's deposition was scheduled for the following morning. So
the 10th.
That was Yep.
Correct. And nobody sees anything strange, right? That's why this case is so fascinating, because it's completely bizarre. All right, guys, look, let's get through these slides. Like I said, I've only got a handful more. I want to do a nice tight podcast, and we'll continue another time. Jack 61, can we have the next slide, please? Beautiful. I could actually read this one out if you like. Yeah? Okay. In May 2022, less than 1 year after his mother's death, Avery left the maximum security prison in Waupun, but it wasn't to regain his freedom. The Wisconsin Department of Corrections moved Avery to the medium security prison, Fox Lake Correctional Institution. The distance from Manitowoc to Fox Lake is 94 miles. Quote, Stephen Avery, the biggest blow to him was when his mother died. Zellner explained during our interview on September 29, 2023. But we can get the next slide. Got some very real friends. And he's got one friend from Australia who has been consistently bringing his father to visit him. He's in a new relationship with a female, and she's just a breath of fresh air. She's educated, very successful, very stable. I'm not going to mention her name. She has no interest in publicity. So she is just a gift, and so is the friend from Australia. I'm not going to mention their names, but he's doing quite well considering he's been wrongfully convicted twice. But he's definitely got these very loyal people who have helped him get through this. Isn't that interesting? Now, I'm not sure, I'm not going to mention any names. Whoever's in chat, if they could recognize themselves, they can comment, but I'll leave it at that.
Just one brief comment. I think it's very interesting that considering the charges that Stephen and Brendan both, because Brendan got moved as well, that they were moved to medium security, which just gives them more privileges and access to things that you can't get in high security. So I think it's a really interesting move, all things considered.
Yep. Awesome. I'll continue. Meanwhile, across the state border in Illinois, Zellner remained committed to uncovering the truth. One of her strongest attributes is her patience. She has an uncanny ability to remain even-keeled, to stay the course, to not get frustrated, even after a post-conviction ruling does not go her way. Because Avery's case has garnered international prominence, Zellner has encountered her share of online critics who have wanted her to fail. On the other hand, there are ordinary people out there who simply seek the truth. People who did not know Steven Avery or Kathleen Zellner at the time of making a murderer. One was a man who moved to Colorado. His name was Tom Sawinski. And just before we continue, it is true. Kathleen Zellner has definitely received a lot of criticism. Does anyone want to comment on that? And anyone in chat? Do you think that criticism has been fair? Has it been harsh or well-deserved? Jack 61.
Well, I think it's been a combination of all. I don't know what advice that she got about closing his original pro se motion from 2012 or 13 instead of amending it, which of course caused a lot of problems later. I don't understand how that happened because as far as I know, she had a Wisconsin attorney and they should have known how that would have affected anything new being brought in by closing
Yes.
that, voluntarily closing that pro se motion. So, yeah, I don't, I'm not going to say that's a well-deserved criticism. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how those kinds of things goes. Different states have different requirements and that kind of thing. So it could have just been a human error. It was just a mistake. But I think some of the other criticism that she's got is undeserved. I mean, there was one critic, and he actually appeared in Convicting quite extensively, used to talk about it and post all these Reddit posts about how much wine she was drinking. She was buying wine in the huge boxes that they come in. And I'm not talking about a gallon. I'm talking about, a vat in a paper box. It was really terrible, terrible commentary. And there's still some of that going on, but that got kind of quieted down. So, yeah, I think some of the criticism is probably deserved, but I think a lot of it's not.
Yeah, it's a very interesting. The whole thing is very interesting from a psychological basis. In Australia, if you're from Australia, I'm not sure whether we have that this same thing in America. It's called the tall poppy syndrome. Have you heard about it? Have you guys heard about it?
I haven't heard. No.
It'd be interesting if anyone's in chat is from Australia, whether you've heard it. It basically means that if anyone is successful, you chop them down like a tall poppy. Right? You criticize them. Instead of praising them, saying you're doing a great job, you cut them down. And Kathleen Zellner has received a huge amount of criticism, right? In Australia, it's called the tall poppy syndrome. If you're too successful, people don't like that, so they cut you down to size. So look, what I'll do, guys, I'll read the next page. We'll get somebody else to read. You guys happy with that? Yeah?
Sounds good, Doc.
All right. At the time of the Hallbark murder in 2005, Sawinski had lived in Manitowoc County for more than 20 years. He used his trusty four-door sedan, tan and gold, to bring people their daily newspaper. Sawinski worked as a motor route carrier for Garnet, Wisconsin Media, parent company of USA Today, and owners of 10 daily newspapers across Wisconsin at that time, including the Herald Times Reporter in Manitowoc. For Sawinski, most of his early morning newspaper deliveries were dull and uneventful. Every so often, Sawinski might encounter deer darting across the highway or see the flashing red and blue lights of a police car speeding to an emergency. For Sawinski, the early morning events of November the 5th, 2005, stayed on his mind for several years. As the years went by, he wondered to himself, did he, of all people, possess the key to unlock one of the biggest clues surrounding the Teresa Hallbark murder mystery? Oh boy. So I think it's pretty obvious here, Jack 61, that Tom Sawinski is a very important person. What do you think?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because I remember everybody that's that's been around us knows, but the Sawinski call, at least half the call we've got from um, the open records request from back in 2022, early 2022, and that call was discovered that he made around 10:30 p.m. on the night of November 6th. His girlfriend at the time swore an affidavit that that was his voice. So after he swore this affidavit out, we're all saying, this is great, but you need more, because this looked weird. And that's therefore Blagno, we were fortunate to get those calls, and this one was included. So that does give us some integrity, and it's really difficult. A phone bill would be even better, but this is hard to ignore.
Yeah, it is. Jack 61, would you like to read the next slide, please? Slide
Absolutely.
15. Yep.
Absolutely.
We're almost getting to the end of our first podcast, but we're building up there. Let's go for it, guys.
All right. While most of Manitowoc County's citizens remain comfortably asleep in their beds, Sawinski's newspaper delivery route put him near Avery salvage yard for what became a scary, unforgettable encounter. Before sunrise, Sawinski steered his sedan along State Highway 147. Then he turned left, bringing him down Avery Road. Quote, soon after I turned onto Avery Road, I witnessed an individual who I later realized was Bobby Dassey and another unidentified older male pushing a dark blue RAV4 down Avery Road on the right side towards the junkyard, end quote. Sawinski recalled in his affidavit, quote, Bobby Dassey was shirtless even though it was early November. The second man appeared to be in his 50s or early 60s, had a long gray beard, was wearing a worn, puffy jacket, had a larger frame, and was around 6 feet in height. Keep going.
I've got a couple of diagrams coming up next. Now, I want to ask a question to the panel and everyone in chat. If what Tom Sawinski observed is true, should Bobby Dassey be concerned? Jack 61.
Yeah, absolutely should be concerned, and it's an even bigger. I mean, you can't. I mean, for me, I don't expect other people necessarily to agree with what I'm going to say, but it's a bigger concern too because he connects to the Manitowoc County Dispatch. She says, "Well, the shift commander's out in the field. I got to connect you to him." That happens, and he talks to Sergeant Singlup. That's right. And we have nothing. There's nothing. If he told this story, not necessarily at that time that he would know Bobby Dassey from, Alan Avery. We don't know. But apparently, I don't guess he did. But if he identified a young man and an older man pushing this dark blue RAV down Avery Road in the early morning hours, and they didn't act on it, we got a problem, Houston. No report, nothing. Now, I wouldn't necessarily expect, and this has been some criticism that we've got from other people that said we had the second half of this call and we took it off the library. Bullshit.
No.
We never had it. It doesn't exist. Once a dispatch call is connected out of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, that call ends and a new connection is formed. That is not recorded. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Correct.
But anyway, if that truly happened and he told this Manitowoc County sergeant his story and they didn't do shit, again, Houston, we got a problem here.
Interesting. Cherie, what about yourself? If what Tom Sawinski described is correct, should Bobby Dassey be worried? Is he to be concerned?
100%, yeah.
Okay. What about some of the comments in chat? What do people feel? Bobby Dassey should be concerned or shouldn't be concerned?
Trying to read through here, Doc. James Crane says, I'll highlight it here. It compromises Bobby's testimony and makes everything he said suspect.
Okay.
That's true, James. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
TTM fangirl, you get sweaty when pushing a car a long way. If I was if I was a bruh, I'd take my shirt off too.
Yeah. Yep.
No
Interesting.
doubt.
Now, I actually checked the temperature. It was 6 degrees Celsius that morning. 6 degrees.
So pretty chilly.
I'll tell you
So
what,
pretty cool.
it would have been pretty chilly. All right. Very interesting.
Well, we also can't forget about what was seen on the back of that RAV4 tower cover. There were handprints. There were 2 handprints back there. I'm not saying they were Bobby. I'm not saying that they were anybody that I can identify. I'm just saying they were on there. We can see them.
Correct. So what I'll do, guys, I'm going to go through this diagram. I'm going to show you how, if what Tom Sawinski said is correct, how potentially damaging this is. So we're talking about here the early morning hours of November the 5th, right? So this is according to Tom Sawinski, what he stated. Now, he was driving up Highway 147, and he does a left-hand turn or a turn onto Avery Road. All right, so he's going on the highway, Highway 147. He turns up onto Avery Road. He says that he encounters 2 people, and he named one of them, Bobby Dassey, who was shirtless, and he also identified someone else, but he didn't know that person's identity. He stated that he was an older male, long grey beard. A lot of people affectionately call him Santa, right? But it's what they were doing, which potentially is very nefarious. They were pushing a dark blue RAV4 up Avery Road. Now, it just so happens that the color and the make and model of Teresa Halbach's car is a dark blue RAV4. So Tom Sawinski, and we'll read about it, he goes all the way down to where the post office boxes are, right down the end of Avery Road. He drops off the newspaper, turns around, and lo and behold, he encounters Bobby Dassey standing in the middle of the road, right? And the guy in the, I think it was the passenger side or driver side, we'll read it in a second, he ducks. And as a consequence of seeing Bobby Dassey, he swerves and goes into a ditch and then continues driving out. That's the encounter, right? Now, Tom Sawinski did not see Bobby Dassey holding a key. He did not see Bobby Dassey holding Teresa Halbach's electronics. He just said that he saw Bobby Dassey and an unidentified older male. Now, are there things wrong, potentially wrong, with his affidavit? Of course there are. Is Tom Sawinski going to be ripped to pieces? Yes, he will be, right? There'll be individuals in the community, and there's no doubt the judge or lawyers that will try and rip Tom Sawinski a new one. But we have to remember this. The date, right, Jack 61, right, Cherie, the date that he called this in, it was November 6th.
Can't be ignored.
You can't ignore it. Now, you have to ask yourself the question, could he have possibly made a mistake in identifying Bobby Dassey well after the fact? Yes. He could have absolutely made a mistake. That is indeed possible. The fact that he actually said dark blue RAV4, to me, that's damning. But he also made another observation. He said that the lights weren't turned on. And don't worry, we'll read it. The lights weren't turned on in the RAV4. So we know that the battery was disconnected in the Toyota RAV4. We don't know when that occurred, right? So that's important. But when he phoned this in, consider the date, one day after. So there's no doubt that you need to consider, did he fabricate the whole lot? Did he do it because he wanted publicity? You never know. Also, we don't have the conversation of what he said to Seglob, if indeed Seglob received a call from Tom Sawinski, whether it was transferred across. Right, Jack 61, we don't have that call.
No.
Right?
And I actually just linked that call in the live chat. And if you want, I can play it.
Don't worry, I've got it queued up. We will play it.
Okay.
Don't worry, Jack 61. We will play it. So I want you to have a look at this, right? This is the morning before Pam Sturm finds the Toyota RAV4. And what Tom Sawinski is saying is that he saw two individuals pushing what appears to be a dark blue RAV4 up Avery Road. He names one of those people as Bobby Dassey, right? So quite clearly, Tom Sawinski is a very important eyewitness here. Is he going to get grilled? Is he going to get ripped to pieces? Yes, he will be. But we are merely playing back what is present in the book. Right, Jack 61? Right, Cherie? Do we have a new comment?
Well, again, the phone call, the date can't be ignored. I mean, the date and time came from Manitowoc County. This is what they sent with the open records request. We didn't change anything.
No. So we're not saying that Tom Sawinski is correct. We're just recalling what he wrote in his affidavit.
That's right.
The fact that he did call it in on November the 6th. Now,
right.
Here's the important thing. One, Stephen Avery is not arrested. Two, the investigators, they're not even involved at this time, right? They're involved after the RAV4 is found. The only piece of forensic evidence that is found at that stage is the Toyota RAV4, right? The Toyota RAV4 is then taken to the crime lab. At that stage, they don't even know whose DNA is present in the RAV4, right? They found no other forms of forensic evidence.
No.
There is obviously no arrest. There's no trial. There's no ma'am. There's no cam. There's nothing. So on November the 6th, one day after, Tom Sawinski phones in and he talks about, look, I'm not sure whether this is relevant or not, about Teresa Horbach, and the lady that he phones transfers the call to Sergeant Seglob, who one day after Jack 61 is at where? He's part of Search Team A. He's at Cuss Road.
Cuss Road, yeah.
So everything is linked together. So is Tom Sawinski a bullshit artist? Is he fabricating? Is he lying? Or is he actually telling the truth?
Yeah, and that I was actually going to comment about that briefly, talking about this, because obviously the problem is exactly what you said. Is he bullshitting just to get his name in the bright lights? I don't think he is, because he made the call. We have the call. But, looking at it from the standpoint of like we do, being so interested, of course, we're years later, starting in, late 2015, looking at the case, for Sawinski, I think that maybe from his viewpoint, I called, I did my civic duty, I told him what I saw, and he moved on. He didn't keep up with the case. He didn't follow it. He doesn't know all the ins and outs and all the shit that we know. And for him, he let it go and moved on with his life. He probably had other things going on, and like most people, I'm sure. So then Making a Murder comes out, and he's like, wait, holy shit. They didn't really listen to what I said. Or if they did, they ignored it.
Correct.
So
Correct.
he may start making some noise after the fact.
Yep. And also that's exactly what triggered Ramlo as well.
Yep.
Right. And when Ramlo named, I thought I saw Sergeant Colburn at the Senex station.
That's
so
right.
Quite clearly, with Making a Murderer, it refreshed the memories, rightly or wrongly, of various witnesses that have seen the RAV4. But to me, and also Tom Baresh, this is very, very damaging, because a couple of hours later, what does Pam of God find? The RAV4, the victim's vehicle, on the Avery salvage yard, right? So it's critical, right, Jack61? Right, Cherie? It's critical what Tom Sawinski said to Sergeant Segalob. Guys, would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yep. Now, if this goes to court, can Kathleen Zellner subpoena Sergeant Segalob?
Oh, I think so. Well, I think that she definitely could subpoena him for testimony, and he could say, whatever. Hell, I don't remember. God, that's been years ago. I can't recall what I said.
But if you're Sergeant Segalob, are you going to admit talking to Tom Sawinski?
Probably not.
Or are you going to do a Mark Aurora? I don't recall.
Cherie. Probably not, unless he has a conscience, but Mike Moore didn't, so he did a lot of I don't recall.
Correct. Yeah, no offense, Cherie. He's probably going to pull a Cherie. I don't recall.
Going to pull a Cherie. Yeah. But here's the interesting thing, and we got it on phone calls. Remember how people were calling in tips, right? They had a tip line. And Wiegert, and I think it was Wiegert and Remiker, I think it was those two, had a big laugh saying, oh, somebody called in that Teresa Orbach stopped her vehicle and took photographs of a cow.
Yep.
Right? Here is potentially a witness that said, I saw two guys pushing the victim's vehicle up Avery Road hours before Pam of God found it. Don't you think that's an important tip or clue? Or wait for it. Is that? No, it couldn't have been. I was thinking, how did the Sheriff Pagel get tipped off? I reckon he got a tip off that the RAV4 was on the property, and Pam of God went straight towards it, right? Because that was a day after, so it couldn't have been from Tom Sawinski. I wonder who else called in the tip. Jack61.
Yeah, that's interesting because of the change of plans. Early on the morning of November 5. Boss has got a change of plans. He's got something else he wants us to do, which was, of course, to involve the volunteer searchers.
Volunteer searchers, correct.
Yeah, and this is after Pagel had been at Teresa's house when, approximately, we can't prove they were there together, but I think they were.
Yeah, because Pam's firm and sent off a fact.
That's right. They were testing. He was testing the fax machine. For some reason, the sheriff went to do that. I don't really understand that, but Sheriff Pagel and Pam and Nicole Sturm were arrived late at the search party, and voila, they're going into the Avery salvage yard with a camera and Pagel's direct number.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, which we discussed.
I think he was tipped off. I do.
Yep. I reckon he received a tip-off as well. Very, very interesting. All right. So Jack61, we can actually go through the next couple of slides. We don't even have to read them. Therefore, really for research purposes, if you want to, this is Tom Sawinski's affidavit. If you're interested, just pause the video and have a read yourself. So there's only 3 pages in total. So basically, Tom Sawinski highlights all the major points, and don't worry, we'll be discussing them. But if you look at 16D, you can see that it was signed 10th of April, 2021. So this is relatively recent material that we're presenting here. But Jack61, if we look at the next slide, this is interesting, right? Because not only do we have the affidavit, but Tom Sawinski actually describes the location and the spot where he saw Bobby Dassey and the older gentleman pushing the RAV4. And remember, what he said was when he drove past them and came back up, Bobby Dassey was standing in the middle of the road, obviously trying to stop Sawinski, and he had to swerve in the ditch. But have a look at where the X is, the black X. How fortunate was that Tom Sawinski just caught them as they were on the top of Avery Road. So had Tom Sawinski arrived, say maybe 5 minutes later, he wouldn't have spotted them. Would you agree, Jack 61?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I don't know how quick they were pushing, but it's very likely he wouldn't have seen them.
Yep. Interesting. All right, guys. Look, I've only got a couple of more slides, and then we can end the podcast. Cherie, do you see slide 17?
I do.
Yeah. Would you like to read it, please? This is from what Tom Sawinski said in his affidavit. Let's go for it.
The RAV4 did not have its lights on, Sawinski remembered. I drove down Avery Road toward the mailboxes, left the Herald Times in the mailbox, and turned around. I felt very afraid as I approached the two individuals because Bobby Dassey attempted to step in front of my car, blocking my exit. I was within 5 feet of Bobby Dassey, and my headlights were on the entire time. The older man ducked down behind the open passenger door. I swerved to the right and drove in the shallow ditch to avoid hitting Bobby Dassey. I called out, "Paperboy, gotta go," because I was afraid for my safety. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Keep on?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sawinski's encounter with Bobby Dassey took place hours before the police made the Avery salvage yard the focus of their murder investigation for the next several days. Bobby Dassey looked me in the eye, and I could tell with the look in his eyes that he was not happy to see me there, Sawinski noted. I knew that Bobby Dassey and the older individual were doing something creepy. Unbeknownst to Sawinski, Halbach's RAV4 would be discovered later that Saturday morning.
Yep, we can keep going.
Oh, sorry. Someone had even covered it with several boards, not necessarily to hide it, but to make it easy for someone to discover the car. And sure enough, when the mother-daughter volunteer search party members, Pamela Sturm and daughter Nicole, arrived mid-morning, they quickly found the RAV4 along the outer ridge of the Avery salvage yard. After I learned that Teresa Halbach's car was found on November 5th, 2005, I contacted the Manitowoc Sheriff's Office and spoke with a female officer, Sawinski remembered. I reported everything I have stated in this affidavit to the officer. The officer said, "We already know who did it." I provided my phone number, and they said they would contact me soon. I never heard back from the police.
Wow. Okay. Very, very interesting. And I think once we listen to the phone call, Sawinski has made several errors here because a lot of this information he never told the female officer. He must have been thinking of Seglob, speaking to Seglob, what Seglob said. But that's pretty damaging. We already know who did it. This is November the 6th. Jexy, do you have any? That sound a bit weird?
Yeah, it's very damaging. I mean, said after the fact and years later, again, going back, just thinking of myself doing this. I mean, I delivered papers as a child, completely different situation. But at the same time, I'm sure his encounter or his nightly runs or early morning runs to deliver the paper were uneventful. People are asleep. They get up to get their paper. And I did it on Sunday mornings. Yeah, it was dead. There was nobody out, So for him to encounter this, if he's being truthful, he's probably, I'm sure he didn't know it was Bobby. He didn't know the Averys, until he saw years later Bobby's photo and making a murder. He's like, well, hold on, wait, I saw that guy. This is a guy. I mean, in his mind, I'm not saying that's who he saw. He could be wrong. He could. I mean, that's a fact. But that's just who he's identifying in his affidavit, and until that's disproven or discounted completely, it has to be accepted by the court as the truth.
Okay, look, let's forget that he identified Bobby Dassey, right?
Yep.
Now, it is a salvage yard, right? So the argument could be, well, could it be just two random people pushing a car onto the salvage yard because their car broke down and whatever? Does anyone buy that story? Could have this just been a random breakdown, two guys just pushing the vehicle onto the salvage yard because it is a salvage yard? Yeah? Does anyone buy that?
Well, I mean, it's possible. They admittedly had problems with people coming onto the salvage yard and stealing shit. That's true. There were problems over in that quarry too, of bodies and people getting the hell beat out of them over there because it's isolated. So there were problems, out in the rural part of the county. There's no doubt. So,
right. So what I'm trying to think of, is there a non-nefarious presentation or argument or way that we can account for this? And the answer is no, because how many dark blue RAV4s did they find on the entire Avery salvage yard?
One.
Yeah. One. And where was it? It was at the back pit area. So had they found another one, potentially, one could say, well, had nothing to do with the case. But the mere fact that it was the same color, same make and model as Teresa Horbach's car that is found mere hours after, the two events appear to be linked. And the change
of plans that suddenly occurred the morning of the 5th.
Yeah, but also damning is the fact that whether it was Bobby Dassey or somebody else tried to stop Sawinski from driving past him. To me, that's damning. It means that they were up to no good, guys. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of a non-nefarious solution. I can't find one, right? If their car had broken down, wouldn't the normal thing is to ring up the salvage yard or ring up the police or ring up a tow truck? Yeah.
That's right. I can't disagree with that.
Okay. All right, Jack 61. We've got a couple of more slides to go. Can we have a look at slide number 19? Now, as we all know, when Nicole and her mother, Pam, went to the salvage yard, and Nicole actually snuck in a camera, right? And that camera was given to Nicole and Pam Sturm, as well as the direct phone number to Sheriff Pagel and also a map. And these are the 6 photographs that Nicole Sturm took of the RAV4. And it just so happens to be very, very similar to the vehicle that Tom Sawinski described. Now, we don't know what Tom Sawinski told Seglob. That's an important point. We've only got the call of him ringing up the MTSO. We don't have the second part of that call. But remember, Jack 61, Zona was criticized initially because there was no proof of a call at all, correct?
That's right. And we were kind of critical of it because we wanted more. I mean, it's great. It's a great affidavit, but you got to have something to back up what he's saying.
Correct. And lo and behold, they found evidence that Tom Sawinski did in actual fact call the MTSO one day after the RAV4 got found. That's very, very damning. All right, Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? We're nearly done. So this is what does my head in. Now let's not mention Bobby Dassey. If those two individuals placed the RAV4 at the pit area, tell me, am I hallucinating? But did they do a piss poor attempt to disguise that it was the victim's vehicle? Yes or no? Did they do a good or bad attempt, Jack 61?
Horrible, horrible, horrible.
And what led you to that conclusion, Jack 61?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that RAV4 sticker is right on the back of it.
Yeah.
And it's the only vehicle around that, about hell, from everything that I've seen in the salvage yard, the only vehicle that had a bunch of shit piled on and around it. No others did.
Correct. But what is very interesting is that obviously the number plates have been left off, and the number plates were found on the gravel road. What two properties are just above where that gravel road is? So if you go up that gravel road where the number plates are, who lives at those two trailers?
Barb and Stephen.
Yep. And who else?
Bobby and Blaine and Brendan.
Yep. Okay. So members of the Barb's home, and also Stephen, of course. All right.
Yep.
Now, here's a question. Here's a criticism that I've seen on X and other social media platforms. Has Tom Sawinski ruled out Stephen Avery pushing the RAV?
Well, he kind of did in his description, because Stephen Avery's not 6 foot tall. He didn't have a long gray beard.
Right. Because I've heard the argument that Tom Sawinski could have potentially have seen Stephen Avery pushing the RAV4, which then begs the question, why would Stephen bring damning forensic evidence back to where he lives?
Yeah, it's kind of like what was allegedly found in the burn pit. Why the hell would he do that? It makes no sense at all.
Correct. So I think you've got to agree that whoever left the RAV4 there didn't do a very good job at disguising it. And I agree with Cherie. The reason why the RAV4 was left in this manner was to be found. Would you guys agree?
100%. It had to be found.
Yeah. If you're Stephen Avery, who has worked with cars, and you've just committed this horrendous murder, you're going to do a much better effort than just that. Because if he took the number plates off, what was staring at him right in his face?
Well, that RAV4 sticker. Yeah. I mean, the spare tire cover, you can't miss it.
Yep. And not only that, he left the decals on the car, the badges on the car. There was no attempt to disguise what it was, a Toyota RAV4. So you could easily tell that this vehicle was meant to have been found. Same with the number plates. They were left in the back seat of a vehicle that had its windows blown out, right? Clearly, it was a poor attempt to disguise. All right, Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide, please? Now, this is interesting. Let's assume that Tom Sawinski didn't see Bobby, right? Just get rid of that name altogether. Just say that at the bare minimum, Tom Sawinski saw two people pushing the RAV down Avery Road. Where the arrowhead is where the RAV4 was found. It had no lights on. They were pushing it, which means that obviously if the motor was running and the lights were on, there's a good chance that it would have been seen. Correct, guys? Would you agree with that? If they had the motor running and the lights on, there's a good chance that somebody may have spotted it.
It's possible. It's possible. Absolutely. I mean, we know Stephen had bear, and he probably, I don't know if he'd have barked from that far away, but I don't know about, other. I just think it's a possibility that it could have been seen, heard. Absolutely.
Right. Now, I want you to put yourselves and people in chat in the shoes of the two guys pushing the RAV4. It's dark, probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning. What problems have you got? Immediate problems have you got pushing that vehicle and eventually placing it where it was? And forget that it's Bobby Dassey, just two random individuals. What are the problems that you've got? Immediate problems you've got. What are your problems? Jack 61.
Number one, getting off there without being seen.
Yes.
That's that's a huge problem. That's probably my number one. Not wanting to be caught anywhere near that damn thing.
Okay.
I've got a lot of other things that I don't know which one to choose. What are you thinking, Doc? Or Cherie, if you got a thought.
I can't think of anything besides not wanting to get caught.
Yeah, that's my overriding factor right there. Getting the hell away from it.
Not wanting to get caught. But how about this? How about if there are guard dogs?
Well, there again, that's why I mentioned I don't know what other animals that could have been loose on the property.
Yeah.
That could have been a problem. I don't know of any, but
right. What about the fact that if you're Stephen, you've already had law enforcement come onto your property, you've already had the media come onto your property. How about if his family was patrolling the salvage yard with guns?
That's a possibility.
That's a possibility. So these two random strangers who likely have never been at the salvage yard, they're obviously using the RAV4 to set Stephen up. How did they know that there were no dogs? There weren't adults patrolling the property with guns. There weren't law enforcement officers around the periphery watching the salvage yard, and wait for it. How did they know that nobody was home?
Everybody was gone but Earl and Bobby, wasn't it? Is that correct?
Correct. But how did these two random people know that they weren't going to be disturbed by Dolores or Chuck?
Good point.
Yep, had to have the insider knowledge of some kind. I mean, they would almost have to.
So think about this. These two random individuals somehow get their hands on the RAV4 and they've got a bright spark idea. They're going to bring it onto the Avery salvage yard to set Stephen up. These two random individuals. How do they know that they're not going to encounter adults with shotguns pointing at them?
Unless they had prior knowledge, I mean, they wouldn't know. I mean, that's the only conclusion that I can come to.
All right, here's the issue. Both Chuck and Brendan Dassey left for Crivets 1 day prior. Who knew that?
I would imagine only the family, maybe a couple friends, but that's all I would know.
Yep, so family would have known that, correct?
Yep.
All right. Now, Stephen and his mother didn't leave until the morning of Saturday, November the 5th, correct?
That's right. Early morning. That's right.
Yep. So Dolores would have been fast asleep in her house, right?
Yep. That's right.
Now, Chuck, remember what he said when he left for Crivets, he saw headlights near his property, correct?
That's right. He did.
That's one day prior. But he never turned back. He phoned up his brother to go and have a look. Now, where does Stephen Avery live compared to where the RAV4 is?
Diagonally across the yard.
Who knew that Stephen lived there?
Well, mainly the family, but I mean, there may have been a few others, but the family. Yeah.
Now, do you see the point that I'm getting at? Why Zona is now looking at family?
Sure. Absolutely.
Am I exaggerating? Am I stretching the string too far? Or what I've just presented, does that make any sense that the individuals who placed the RAV4 on that property are just two random strangers?
Well, if it is, they had to have knowledge of at least some of these events that were going on, because them going to Crivets was really a family thing. I don't think they would. I mean, there probably were a few friends that probably knew, but other than that, it was family,
right,
that lived there.
How do two random strangers know how to push that vehicle in the dark to the pit area and not encounter family, dogs, and law enforcement?
That's right. That's a good question, and it's one that, well, we know which way it points, and that's unfortunate, but we have to accept it for what it is.
Yeah. So again, I'm not accusing anybody. I'm asking the questions that Kathleen Zellner would ask in court, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
That's what she would present to the judge. Cherie.
I'm sorry. Passive Bear said that the cops did tell Earl that they had been watching the place for weeks. So,
Wow.
but
Wow. Interesting. Very, very interesting. All right. Okay. So here's the question. Where was Bobby Dassey? Let's go for it, guys. We've got a couple of more slides. So here's the question. This is something that Kathleen Zellner will present in front of a judge. Could it have actually been Bobby Dassey? Is it possible? Let's have a look. So if we have a look at the next slide, by fluke, Strang asked Bobby Dassey a series of questions. Jack61, would you like to read out the questions and I'll read out the responses by Bobby? Right?
Sure.
Pay attention, guys. This is very important. Let's go for it.
Right. Friday night, you don't have to work.
No.
That is, for you, the work week ends at 6 on Friday morning, right? But it starts up again at 10 on Sunday night.
Yes.
Actually, Friday night and Saturday night are your weekend.
Yes.
So Friday night, 6:30 or 7, Mike's over and you don't have to go to work that night.
Yes.
But you have heard that night before, or not you, I guess, but the night before, the news had been on TV about Miss Halbach disappearing.
Yes. So
interesting.
So was Bobby potentially the person pushing the RAV, or was he at work?
No, he was off.
He was off. Right?
Yeah.
So that Saturday morning, he was off. Now, does Bobby Dassey have an alibi for where he was?
I can't recall. I don't think so, but I really don't remember.
Interesting. So potentially it could be Bobby. Now I'm only talking as what Kathleen Zellner would say, not me.
That's right.
Not me. I'm just saying she's presenting this in front of a judge to say, Your Honor, he was off. He was not working. It could have potentially been him.
Yeah. Furthermore, we don't have a checked or confirmed alibi. That's a problem, you know.
Correct. But furthermore, who is going to know the property layout better than a family member? And the answer is nobody.
No.
Nobody. Bobby would have known. This is what Kathleen Zellner would say. Bobby would have known that Chuck, his brother, had already gone to Crivets. Dolores is a fairly elderly lady. Early hours of the morning, probably asleep, won't hear a thing, especially if the vehicle is turned off. Just pushes straight past. He knows the dogs, where they are. He's got 2 family dogs. He's got his own black Labrador. Stephen's got Bear chained up. Stephen is right on the other side of the property. So if it's a family member, sorry, Jack61.
I was going to say, just so you were talking about this, and I've thought about this before. I've never really voiced it, but under the scenario, you think about where the RAV is, the isolation of it up on that ridge, away from Stephen's place, where Bear would have definitely barked if he heard something, right?
Correct.
As being an intentional place to put the thing and not get caught. Somebody not waking up that the damn dog barking his head off because he hears something, hears people out there.
Correct.
I think that's a real problem.
Correct. And Kathleen Zellner will be presenting all of this. And furthermore, right, if Bobby Dassey is seen walking down the gravel road to go back to his property or whatever, no one's going to say anything, right? No one's going to say a thing. He lives there, where he was either there or he went to somebody's place. But because the salvage yard is surrounded by quarries, all you got to do is go into the quarry and walk straight out, correct? Who's going to see you?
Right?
Nobody, right? So it's not looking too good if what Tom Sawinski said is indeed true, right?
Correct.
Would you agree with that, guys?
Absolutely.
All right. So, guys, my final slide is this, slide number 21. Cherie, would you like to read our final slide for today?
Okay.
Thank you.
10 years later, in December 2015, Sawinski joined millions of people across the globe, immersing themselves in the brand new 10-part true crime Netflix documentary, Making a Murderer. After watching season 1 of Making a Murderer, I contacted Avery's trial attorneys to inform them of what I saw and never heard back. Nothing has been promised or given to me in exchange for this affidavit, Sawinski declared.
All right. Okay. And hence, of course, Tom Sawinski's mind or recollections got refreshed. And he goes, oh, my God, I recognize that guy. The guy pushing the RAV4 is Bobby Dassey, right? And so that's why when Kathleen Zellner put in her filing for not only a Brady violation, but as a Denny suspect, remember what we read yesterday, Jack 61, all the criteria that you have to put forward just to suffice as a Denny. You can't just walk in and say, yeah, it was him. You have to suffice all the criteria or it gets thrown out. So very, very interesting. All right, guys. Well, look, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. There was only 3 of us on the panel, but I think we managed quite well. I don't want to rush this. Neville and I put it together. Like I said, we're going to deep dive into this. And the good thing is we've got the parallel filing and response that Kathleen Zellner just put in that we read out yesterday. And of course, we'll all be watching to see what the state does. Right, guys? Please let us know if you've enjoyed the podcast, if you enjoyed the slightly shorter format. I think it works a little bit better. Give us some hints or clues on what you'd like to see included. Don't worry, we'll be playing the phone call. We've got plenty of trial testimony, and we're going to break and unpack this down, right?
I was just going to ask you, Doc, if you want me to play the call. I mean, I've got it queued, but look, we can play it next time.
Yeah, why don't you play the call? We'll play it again in the next podcast, but let's finish the podcast with the Tom Sawinski call into the MTSO. Let's go for it, guys.
This call is very short. It's 1 minute and 15 seconds, so here we go. Sorry, I did that wrong. Here we go.
Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, this is Carla. Can I help you?
Carla, I don't know if this good information, bad information. Who do I talk to about this? The girl that's missing from Hilbert?
I can have you speak with my shift commander. Can you hold on a moment?
Thank you.
Sure. Hang on, I'm going to transfer to the shift commander. You'll be speaking with Sergeant Singh Laub, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Scott, when I hang up, it's a man on the phone who thinks he has some maybe more leads, and he wanted to speak with somebody on the case.
All right.
That's it.
Well, so the call actually did happen, and Tom Sawinski He was very specific what he said. He's talking about the case, and the call got transferred across. So that you can't get any more damning of a tip if what Sawinski has said is indeed correct. And like I said, what is damning and very, very troubling is that he specifically named Bobby Dassey, right? And as we've just gone through, potentially Bobby wasn't at work, and I haven't seen an alibi for Bobby for that particular time period. And yes, do not worry, Tom Sawinski will be ripped to pieces, right? But at the end of the day, you have to consider he could well be telling the truth. So that's why it is important to test the veracity of his observations in front of a judge. Right? A lot of people argue, nah, you're just wasting time. But you've got Tom Sawinski, you've got Tom Baresh, plus you've got many other eyewitnesses that have seen Teresa Hallbachs off the property. And the only way the state can argue was, oh, well, we're willing to accept that. In actual fact, Jack 61, the judge is even willing to accept that Bobby was pushing the RAV4, and it's no big deal.
No
Why?
big deal.
Because nobody saw him holding the key or electronics, so hence maybe he was just helping out his brother and his uncle. Right, so
yeah, that was the big mic drop. When we read her response, it's like, wait a minute, you don't care that he had her car?
Yeah.
After after she's been after all the suspicion that she's been murdered and sexually assaulted and all this other stuff, it's no big deal, really?
Yep, correct. But again, guys, look, thank you so much, and I hope that you've enjoyed the podcast. Please subscribe. Put your thumbs up on the DNA button, on the thumbs up button. That all helps. And guys, Jack 61, are you doing an open mic tomorrow?
Yes, we're going to jump back into the depositions and start where we left off from the last time, which was I'm pretty sure it was Roar. Yeah, it was Roar's part 2. Tomorrow's we're going to be doing Michael Griesbach, one of your favorite guys.
Oh, awesome.
It's not extremely long. We actually may be able to get the one after. There was 4 on the 22nd of September 2005. We may be able to actually get 2 done tomorrow. I'm going to try and do the kind of the same format. Try to clip these a little bit shorter than the really long ones. It's hard to do covering that kind of information. We'll see where we get. I don't want to keep I don't keep everybody all night. But we'll get to where we get and everybody's comfortable, and we'll move on and do another one.
I put some questions in the private chat with your
go for it.
Those.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you see them, Jack, or do you want me to ask them?
Yeah, you go ahead and ask them. Yep.
How do they explain what happened to the other side of the conversation, Sunglob on the call? I guess that's what they're referring to.
Yeah. Well, they can't. Well, I don't think there's ever been. I don't think there's ever been an explanation, as far as I know. And again, for anybody out there that doesn't understand, I want to say this again. I've said it before many times. When a call comes into dispatch and that person is talking to the dispatch operator, and that operator has to transfer that call out of the sheriff's department or the dispatch center, the connection to the dispatch center is broken, and a new call is created. When that is not recorded, period, end of story. We don't have one call where that happens, not one, out of the thousands of calls we've got. So just so everybody understands that. Doc?
You mean in other times when it got switched over, you did get the recording, or you never did for any of them?
Not for anything gets transferred. Now, anything gets transferred out. No, we don't have. There are calls that come into dispatch where somebody is in their office and they connect them, and we do get the other part of that call because it's still within the sheriff's department, within that system. So the call is captured.
Correct. And at the end of the day, if Tom Baresh didn't come, if Tom Sawinski didn't come forward, you wouldn't have heard about this call.
No.
It's as simple as that. It would have just been one of those things that was lost in the ether.
It just got overlooked when they were getting the calls, right?
Yeah, there wouldn't have been, well, they wouldn't have been able to connect what Tom Sawinski called about and the RAV4. They obviously didn't put two and two together.
Good point.
They didn't put two and two together because remember, they've got a tip line. They're getting tips all the time. But this one here potentially could be very, very important because you're talking about the proximity of time that the person said, look, I saw two guys pushing this dark blue RAV4 and like literally many hours down the track, they do find it on the property. And I just want to echo with what Becca Chu said. We all have a presumption of innocence.
Right.
And no one here is saying that Bobby Dassey did anything, right? That's the important thing. But we are merely presenting what Kathleen Zellner and John Ferak placed in the book because it is a very interesting topic. And that's exactly what Kathleen Zellner has just filed and responded to. But correct, Pikachu is correct. We all have a presumption of innocence, 100%. Thank you.
KZ wants the mileage reading still, right? Somebody asked that.
The odometer readings? Yeah.
Yeah.
When, where do you think the battery change took place?
That's also from TTM Fangirl, I think you got down.
Yes.
Yeah, I think from what I've read, the battery is just a red herring. That particular battery could potentially go with the RAV4. And the reason why they use now I'm not a battery expert at all, please. I'm not a battery expert. The reason why it's got that type of battery is because when it's colder, and in Wisconsin it gets very cold, and Jack 61 can comment, you need a high capacity charge battery to tick over the motor. Is that correct, Jack 61?
Yeah, if your car's not, if you don't have a heater or if it's inside your garage where it's, not 5 below zero, you definitely need a deep cycle battery to be able to maintain that charge to get your car turned over on a really cold morning.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct. But there's no doubt the battery terminals were disconnected, right?
Well, and it was definitely the wrong battery, but that could have happened. Let's just face the fact that her battery or that battery, it may even been before she even bought the damn car. Whoever replaced the battery when they did wherever they bought it may not have had the exact size to fit that battery tray, but it did have the terminals on the correct side and it would work.
Yep. Correct. In Australia, where I am in my state, we have the RAA, and it's roadside assistance. And if you have a dead battery, they try and restart it, of course, by trying to charge it up. But if it's dead flat and won't take a charge, depending on the make and model of your car, they'll get a suitable replacement.
Yeah.
So it may not be the exact battery, but it's got to have specific battery characteristics that would fit and start your car. But it may not be the battery that's exactly from factory, but it does the job. Yeah.
Exactly.
Again, guys, I'm not an expert on car batteries, but I know there's been a lot of conspiracy theories regarding that battery from Crown Vic car, which I think are police vehicles. Yep, correct.
That's right.
Okay, excellent question.
How much elevation to get to where the RAV was spotted to where it was found by Pam?
That's a good question. If somebody was pushing it, I think in relation to that question, if two guys were pushing that RAV, did they have to push uphill? Have to worry about it going downhill? You got a problem. I mean, it is a valid question.
But you see, yes, it is a valid question. But you see, it's a similar problem if it's deposited by Stephen and Brendan, right?
Sure.
But Stephen and Brendan's case, if they drove it there, then there's a good chance that people are going to hear it and people are going to see it. Yeah. So the fact that there were two guys and one of them was fairly big and burly may not have been so much, but I agree, it would have taken a lot of effort to have pushed that RAV4 where it was. No question about it.
Yeah, I've not been there. I mean, I've seen photos, but it's different. I mean, I would certainly like to see a bird's eye view, basically somebody walking and looking at how flat it was. That's an interesting question.
Correct.
Go ahead, Sherry. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yep, very good question.
Okay. I was wondering why the van that was photographed was crushed, since it's what started it all in the first place.
I was wondering why the van that was photographed was crushed.
Barb's maroon van, I think.
Well, was it? I don't think it was crushed, was it?
I don't
No,
know.
I don't think it was.
I don't believe it was crushed.
Okay.
There was another van that was out in the middle of the yard there, if you remember. It was trying to. That's right. I remember that van specifically that they looked at real close, but.
Correct.
All right.
And in the crusher, there was a blue vehicle already in the crusher, right? So
yes,
we've got photographs of a vehicle already had been crushed.
Steven said that he was rushed and didn't have time to take it out. Didn't get another car in it, because they normally pancake two of them together, and then somebody would take the front end loader and take it out of there, stack it. But he said he was rushed and didn't have time.
So to crush the RAV4, whoever it was had to remove the crushed car that was there already, had to then put in the RAV4 using an end loader. You don't need a key. Now, if they didn't remove petrol, battery, transmission, motor, by crushing the vehicle, there's a chance of what happening at Jack 61?
Explosion. You blow that damn crusher all to hell. You kill yourself.
An explosion and a fire, which would definitely draw attention. So you've got similar type of issues. To me, if somebody was setting Stephen up, the whole idea was just to put the RAV4 onto the property. But notice it wasn't just left on the property in the open. It was slightly tucked around in the pit area where you had to literally walk up to it. So it was partially disguised, but not very well disguised, no. Yep, good question.
Please explain where the yellow four-wheeler went from first walk through to the last. It's gone from the Dassey garage.
I'm not sure what that is. The yellow four-wheeler?
I don't know either.
Is that you're talking about an ATV?
Yeah.
Yes.
It has to be an ATV, yeah.
Yep, that I don't know.
I just know golf carts. That's all I can really recall.
Bob had a golf cart. Mama Avery had a car.
Yeah.
I know that there were ATVs because Earl was photographed on one. Yep.
Are there any calls? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are there any calls early in that morning or late the night before that were for Bobby?
I think Kathleen Zellner has got Bobby Dassey's phone records. Yep, she does, because she talks about, later on we'll talk about it in the chapter, there's an incredible spike of phone calls between him and Mike Osmondson.
Yeah, we've got those. Yeah, those were published in an exhibit.
Yep, correct.
Did Sunglob write a report, or can law enforcement notes be accessed?
No, and actually I requested every report that's associated with this case and his personnel file. I'm talking about Sergeant Sunglob. He wrote no report about this at all that I got.
Okay. And the last one I have in this list is, has the salvage yard been sold?
Somebody in the family would have to answer that. And last we heard, they didn't. I think it was Barb that said she was unaware of the yard being sold. But if it had been, it would take some time because those cars have to be cleared off the lot, right?
Yes. I think I heard that it's in the process of being sold, but it may take a couple of years to do all the paperwork and things like that. But again,
you've got several garages. There's environmental concerns that may have to be dealt with oil and oil and transmission fluid. There's just all kinds of things that come with selling that kind of property.
Correct. Yep. It's a high environmental risk. Correct.
Yep. That's right.
Anthony Hills has another question in the chat. Didn't Zellner trace that battery to be under warranty to a county service shop workshop by its serial number?
Yeah, that was that was a post by a case file reviewer that was, very active on Reddit for a pretty good period of time, and this was what some information that he had put up that battery had a serial number that was traced to a fleet of batteries that were delivered to the county garage in Manitowoc, but that was really backed away from for whatever reason. That line of thing. I can't really answer why or why not. I just know that it's been backed off from. That's all I really know.
Yes. Yep.
There's another one from James Crane. When was the report of the white Jeep following the RAV into that area in relation to the Thomas report?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. That Siebert. I don't know whether the exact date is known, because he was quite elderly at the time. Is that correct, guys? But
yeah, I'd have to look at CASO to see if I could find that answer.
Yeah, he lives quite close to the back of the Avery salvage yard, and he said that he saw two vehicles, a white Jeep and the RAV4 being driven in from the back, and then only the white Jeep left. That's very interesting. And then when you factor in Baresh, who saw what he believes to be the RAV4 on County Highway Q, which is towards the back where the quarry is, it's starting to form a picture, a very disturbing picture. Yep. But where that all fits in, timing-wise, I don't know.
Let's see here. I was trying to look that up, but I'm not finding anything. Maybe that's something I can look up.
Yeah. Yep.
And post in the comments later, James. I'll see if I can find an answer to when that report was actually made.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. I think we've answered plenty of questions. Again, fantastic crowd, fantastic participation in the podcast. And thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we'll be back to unpack this chapter. There's a lot of stuff that we've got to discuss. And again, thank you so much for your support. And over to you, Jack61.
Hey, I'm going to say, hopefully you can join us tomorrow, 5 p.m. Central, for the open mic, and go through this deposition of at least Greasebach, maybe one other, but we'll see. Other than that, I'm going to say this has been a Foul Play production.